ご協力感謝いたします。オデッサ主席。
久しぶりね、カリン。
This scene in Girls Frontline 2 is the best scene in all gacha games I've played. It's a perfect execution of a well-written protagonist, which is a rarity in gacha game stories, because most gacha game protagonists are just boring. They are either blank self-inserts or perfect paragons that always do the right thing. This is why other playable characters always steal the spotlight from them. Of course, that is because these protagonists have weak characterization. They are never meant to be interesting because they are just there to frame the story. And some writers don't even try to make them interesting. But not in Girls Frontline 2. And this excellent scene proves it. Later on, I will also explain why self-insert protagonists will never reach this level of writing, and how self-inserts might be holding good gacha game storytelling back. But first, let's break down this scene and explain why it works so well. At its core, this is an awkward reunion of two best friends who had not talked in 10 years. This is exactly what would happen if your dad, who had gone to buy milk for 10 years, suddenly returned to your house. The first thing you will ask is, why? Except in this scene, the missing dad is you. Kalina was both angry and disappointed. But the most upsetting thing is that she held it all back. She didn't yell, she didn't ask why, she was totally calm and composed. But her choice of words says everything. She refused to talk about anything beyond business. She refused to be called by her old nickname, yet she let a kid use that freely. This is her way of saying without words that you've lost the privilege to use that. You're a stranger to her now. But we know that this cannot be true. Despite being ghosted for 10 years, it was revealed that she has been monitoring you all this time. She knew who joined your group, did background checks on them, and she knew where you were at all times. She just couldn't stop caring. But right now, she cannot show that, especially when the commander tried to give her a flimsy reason, which she may know was logical, but emotionally, she just can't accept it. This scene really made you feel like garbage, and you deserve that. And the best part is that you can feel all of this. You can feel every pause they made. Both of them keep struggling to find the right words to say and which emotions they try to hold back. Even without fully knowing these characters, you can understand the emotional weight in this scene. And the voice actors nailed this perfectly. Once again, I have never seen a gacha game protagonist this well written. But why is that? Well, the first reason is that the writers allowed the protagonist to intentionally do wrong, and they don't sugarcoat it. Yes, all gacha game protagonists are flawed in some ways. They can be tricked and make mistakes. But choosing to do that logically, willingly, and fully aware that this will hurt someone they love, that's completely new to me. Of course, if you played the first game, you can argue that the commander had a good reason to leave Kalina. It's logical and done purely without malice. But it still has consequences. You may be surprised that having the protagonist deal with the consequences of their actions is very rare in gacha game stories. Somehow, they always get away with it through sheer luck. Which is a shame, because consequences are the basic recipe of a good story. A character's decision define who they are. Different characters will make different choices based on their beliefs and experiences. And naturally, choices come with consequences. If a character believes that no one should be sacrificed for the greater good, then we want to see how they deal with the consequences of acting on that belief. Here, the consequences will act as a way to test that ideal. Will this character stick to their beliefs when they encounter adversity? Or will they give up on that ideal? How do they deal with their problems? And if all they do fails, what are they willing to lose for that ideal? That is good writing, which makes it very boring if the character decided to die with the character they're trying to save because they see no other way to not sacrifice them for the greater good. And somehow, the writers just give them Deus Ex Machina out of the problem. Wuthering Waves writers, what are you doing? But back to Girls Frontline 2, the conflict between Kalina and the commander are not really that deep, but I can still appreciate that the writers give the consequences time to stir in the background and have the commander wonder if they have done irreversible damage to their relationship. Seeing how they struggle with that allowed for the story to show that Kalina is very important to the commander, judging by how far they were willing to mend that relationship, even if you don't have the full context of what happened between them. That is an excellent show don't tell in action. And this also makes it much sweeter when that forgiveness finally comes. You can feel the relief on the commander's face when Kalina allows them to use that nickname once again, because the commander has earned it. Of course, all of this redemption arc can be avoided had the commander just contacted Kalina in the first place. It's just stupid that they didn't do that. They were too afraid to talk to Kalina and explain why they left. But having the protagonist do stupid things is not bad writing if the protagonist has to deal with the consequences of being stupid. In fact, those consequences can be the driving force behind character growth, tension, or even tragedy, as we see in Girls Frontline 2. The problem isn't that they make mistakes, it's when those mistakes don't matter. Another reason why this scene is so great is the fact that there is a strong two-way connection between the protagonist and the world itself. The commander and Kalina genuinely care about each other. A stronger example would be the relationship between the commander and Groza. As a leader, the commander always puts a strong front to everyone else. But when they are alone with Groza, they let their guard down. There are these little moments where they confide in Groza about all of their doubts, fears, and frustration. And this is very realistic. We don't vent our problems with random strangers. We only vent to our loved ones. Exposing our weaknesses to them is a form of intimacy. It shows that we trust them enough to open up. And this is, again, a rarity in gacha games. Self-insert characters in gacha games cannot have these intimate moments. Yes, other characters can confide their weaknesses to the protagonist, but the self-insert protagonist cannot do that in return because their personalities are not defined. Even well-defined characters like Belle and Wise in Zenless Zone Zero never share their inner struggles with other characters. Intentional or not, this shows a rift between them and the other characters. The siblings might care about their allies, but they don't trust them enough to be vulnerable. It's somewhat selfish because everyone else opens up, but they keep their struggles to themselves. Caring about someone is one thing, but trusting them with your vulnerabilities, that's a lot deeper. By contrast, the relationships the commander had feels real in Girls Frontline 2. They have genuine connections because they share themselves with the world. Again, a clear advantage of having a well-defined character as the protagonist. And this leads to the final advantage in terms of storytelling, which is parallel story arcs. The commander's relationship with Kolfen is a great example. The commander says that Kolfen is braver than them because she is willing to make a choice and work on it instead of running away and hide like a coward. This is what makes parallel story arcs so powerful. When one character reaches a turning point in their character development, it also sparks growth in another. At this moment, the commander is still hesitant to return to active duty. Paradius is still out there and they are too scared to do anything. Yet seeing Colfan's bravery is another push forward, another crack in the wall they've built around themselves. Of course, there are still more steps to go in their character development, like later on in Diane's chapter where the underground facility reminded the commander that there are more consequences for their 10-year absence. Because here's the reality, people suffered while they were gone. People died. The commander's biggest fear isn't just fighting Paradius and losing more people. It's realizing that everything they fought for, every last sacrifice in Griffin, was for nothing. Because of their absence, Paradius returns, and they will need to do all of that again, except this time they don't know who they'll lose next. It could be Kalin, it could be Kroza, it could be anyone. This is their self-loathing, their biggest internal struggle. This is what makes the commander such a compelling, well-written character. And this is exactly why you can't do this with a self-insert protagonist. Self-inserts just don't have a defined personality, which means they can have deep, meaningful parallels with other characters. If they do, it's always on a much weaker level than what Girls Frontline 2 achieves. And this is why this scene stands out. This is why the commander is the best written protagonist in all gacha games. But that's just me. What do you think? Do you think the commander's character arc is one of the best in gacha games? Or do you prefer a more traditional self-insert protagonist? Please do let me know in the comment section down below. I always reply to everyone in my comment section, and I would like to know if there are any other gacha games with stronger, well-written protagonists out there. If you do, please let me know. I'd like to play that game too. If you want to continue watching, I recommend my underrated essay video on Can Yapping Be Good in Gacha Game Stories? Yapping is usually boring, but there are some examples where it can be used well. And with that, I think I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.